Welcome back to the Grandstand P Money here in Paris, and we got F Knowles in New York. What's going on?
Yo, I thought you were gonna run that twice. I was waiting for it.
You know, if Ferrari had actually put in a result, I might have been that excited, but after the last few races, they don't deserve that sweet engine sound twice. But man, what's weird is that Ferrari had a shit weekend again, and that's not even the biggest story.
I don't know if that's weird.
Yeah, no, you're right. Three's become a trend now. But man, we went back to Melbourne and didn't disappoint, man. We, for the first time in history, we've had a race with 3 red flags and 3 restarts. That's never happened before.
Yeah, 3 red flags, man. I mean, we're gonna get into it, but
it's a lot.
Can you say overkill? Normally, I'm a fan, but I mean, yeah, wow.
Obviously,
wow.
It ended in tears and a lot of carbon fiber all over the track. Yeah. And yeah, even one fan got hit with K-Mag's wheel carbon, like a piece of the wheel that flew off in the air.
Yeah.
Which is
like
crazy.
Cut his arm open.
Yeah.
You never hear of that anymore.
Battle wound, man. I mean, that's a good bar story.
Yeah.
Got a piece of.
He didn't even get to keep the piece of the car though, which is kind of it's fucked up.
Cheap ass Gunter probably tracked
him
down.
Back and need to fix it, even though it's in a million pieces.
But yeah, we had a lot of red.
You're gonna duct tape it back to the car.
Oh man, it's a budget cap year, man. You know, we got to anywhere you can save some money, you got to save some money. Yeah. But before we get into it, let's roll that intro.
Roll it.
A question for all of you except Romain Grosjean.
To whom it may concern, fuck you.
More ladies in the paddock? Yeah, more paddock access to some women. There's too many dudes.
I don't really have a lot to comment on that, except that he was being a pussy.
Yo, you know who I was very happy wasn't at the race this weekend though?
Who wasn't at the race?
Well, there were a lot of people who were at the race. Kelly Slater was in the Merc garage. He was a guest of Mercedes. I was just saying Nico Rosberg.
Okay, yeah.
Jensen was great this weekend. Jensen was fucking hilarious, like all weekend.
He just brings it up. Even like, you know, when you realize how like his worth is in free practice, like the banter that he brings in free practice, it makes it worth watching all of a sudden. Nico doesn't have that power, unfortunately.
No.
But yeah, you know who was there, and I was surprised, is Michael Masi making a comeback. It seems like it hasn't been long enough for him to do that.
I don't know, dude. Yeah, I he was probably one of the stewards in this race. Secret steward.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at how incoherent it was, according to some, I don't know where I stand. So let's try to let's get into this red flag confusion because all right, if you missed this race, you will see that, you know, we finished behind safety car. So there was 3 red flags for 3 separate incidents. And on the second red flag came late in the race with 3 laps to go. And we had a standing start after K-Mag. I don't know if K-Mag had a technical failure, but he hit the wall. And we had to basically clean up his the debris, and the safety car wasn't enough, basically. So with 3 laps to go, I honestly thought they might just end the race there, and I wouldn't have been surprised if they did, but they decided to call a red flag, and since we didn't go over the 3-hour race time limit, they had to restart. And then they had two choices: do a standing start or a rolling start. So you lose a lap behind the safety car anyway to get to the grid, and then you have 2 racing laps. So they went for the standing start, and we saw what we saw. It was getting late in Melbourne, and tires weren't getting up to temperature. We saw, at turn 1, we already saw Logan Sargent outbrake himself, hitting De Vries, punting him off. We saw Checo Perez going straight. We saw Gasly going straight. We saw Sainz hitting Alonso, spinning him around. And then the 2 Alpines collided and just completely smashed both cars into the wall, causing the 3rd and final red flag.
And
that's not even over.
It's still, and then, let's see what else. And
then the whole field goes back in, and then there's a bit of a confusion because Max had gotten off the line. He hadn't made it past the first sector, so everyone went back into the pit, red flag, and we didn't know what the order would be. Alonso was already saying, you need to go back the previous lap because there's a precedent in Silverstone. And what the FIA did is they did go back up to the grid, basically, of the last restart, minus the cars that crashed out.
Right.
So minus the Alpines. But what's confusing is that in the past, they would have just kind of, with 1 lap left, they would have just ended the race and just called the results 1 lap before. So instead, we had this, I think for the first time ever, the safety car leading the whole field around. And in the meantime, we were informed that Carlos Sainz had a 5-second penalty for punting Alonso off. So in the end, everyone finished in their order, except Sainz went all the way to the back because 5 seconds on a lap behind the safety car means that you're basically going from wherever you are to last, right?
Yeah.
And
I think he was, that was it, because he was also the last. At that point, there had been 6 cars at DNF, so he was that was the other thing. Like, there was no one else.
Short grid. Yeah. So first of all, what do we think of the penalty? Because at the end of the day, Sainz got a penalty for a portion of the race that actually didn't count because we're not even using anything that happened between that restart and the first few corners. Some argued, I think it was Gunter tried to argue, let's take the order with the mini sectors, because then that meant Hülkenberg was P4, by the way. And with Sainz penalty, that would have been Hülkenberg's first podium, which of course he would have gotten his podium in a crazy way like that. So that's what Haas was trying to argue.
Yeah, nice try, Haas. I misspoke. There were 8 DNFs, not 6.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow, that's been a while since we had this many.
Yeah.
So Sainz gets a penalty. I mean, it was his fault, yes, but what I can't really, and I'm not trying to, and I'm not outraged or anything. I don't understand how you can get a penalty for a portion of the race that doesn't even count.
I don't know either, dude. I mean, well, I guess, no, you're right. Because at the end of the day, if the drivers are all going back to their respective perspective, or their respective places, why is, if it didn't matter, why is Carlos getting a penalty? I guess, I mean, that's really the question here. Well, it did matter because cars crashed out. But I don't know, man. When there was obviously that video, that clip of Carlos in his car. You could see how frustrated he was.
You could see his head moving as he was yelling.
I mean, he was pissed. I just don't. I don't understand it. I think the FIA is going to have to explain themselves.
See, okay,
maybe the stewards will. I don't know. I mean,
do you think?
Apparently, just according to, Will Buxton was saying this in the post race. Apparently, they went by the book, like very strict interpretation of the rules. So, covering their asses, and they weren't using like previous. Naturally, they're always, whatever. But nobody can ever hold them accountable, right? That's like the other thing.
Oh, no,
which is fucking annoying.
Of course not.
But I guess I'm just.
Are you saying they shouldn't have done the restart then in the end?
I think the second red flag. I don't think that we needed the
restart.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, because the first one was due to Albon spinning off, right? Not the first one, but this the second.
No, so the first red flag was Albon.
Albon, right?
Yeah.
Well,
second was K-Mag.
Right. That one totally made sense. Like the first one, I mean, the amount of gravel that was on the circuit, you have to, the amount of cleanup that was needed. You can't have cars driving through there.
Fair.
With that amount of gravel on the track. So that made sense. And then K-Mag, his incident, Lewis even got on the radio. He said, there's so much debris out here. And the amount, I mean, drivers could have picked up a puncture. So it did make sense. Like, I think that they still made the right call there. I still think it required another red flag. Where I don't understand, I guess it's me where I don't this. God damn it! This is like what I don't understand is the penalty to Carlos. I don't get it. I would just knock that as a racing incident. It's a restart. I mean, I think it's harsh. I think it's incredibly harsh.
Alonso said it was harsh as well. And
I know. I mean, it was just shocking coming from him, but maybe he's just being nice because he's Spanish.
He's Spanish,
so, yeah. There's sympathy there. I guess that's what I don't understand. And then we didn't need to bring the guys back out on track again if the running order is just gonna stay the same as it was before you went racing again.
But here's my question to you. I agree with the penalty, and I think
you do agree with the penalty.
No, I agree with how odd the penalty is, right. And I mean I disagree with giving the penalty, but also the FIA is kind of just applying it, by the book, and how they can give any kind of penalties during free practice. That's kind of what they did. It's it doesn't matter if it was, a lap that counted towards the race, because in the end it did count towards the race, but it's more for the procedure of red flags and restarts, because in the end we ended finishing behind the safety car, and no drivers was allowed to overtake. And in this instance, the FIA did apply its own rules and did end behind safety car, and the fans were okay with it. It was the end, and which for me echoes, Michael Masi was there, but echoes Abu Dhabi, which is what should have happened in 2021 in the last race. And no one would have, been mad about it, because that's just the way things are done. Right. So for me, it kind of still shows that there's some things to iron out, with the FIA in the last few laps, but now they've listened to their own protocol, and the world didn't end by not finishing under green flag.
Are we sure that Masi wasn't a steward?
100%.
No, I'm just, obviously joking. They snuck him in, and he's like, God, come on, let me in.
Yeah.
I guess my question so what is the question exactly? What are we asking here?
No, I think it's very confusing. If this is one of your first F1 races, if you started watching this year and you see this, don't worry. This has never happened before. I mean, minus Abu Dhabi, which is less than 2 years ago. But the question is, is the FIA trying too hard to end under green flags, while it should maybe sometimes just go with the protocol and end on a safety car and just end that way?
I mean, I'll say this: no fan wants to see a race end under a safety car, right?
Yeah, but it happens. It happens in Indy.
It does happen. But again, no fan wants to see that, and I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to be mindful of that, because they are realistically in a very tough position, because it's okay, so you finish under safety car, then they're going to get criticized for that decision. Then they try to red flag it so the guys can race, and then you get an absolute clusterfuck at the end, where I think maybe they handled it as best as they possibly could, because let's be real, the drivers also need to take some accountability here. That was an absolute nightmare of a restart.
100%.
And everybody knew that they could make up a few positions on that restart, and maybe there was going to be another yellow, and then they finished under yellow. There was a lot of gambles made.
Ocon called it suicidal behavior. He's like, everyone was trying to get off the line and try to make too many risky moves. And I was like, well, that's racing, first of all. But
yeah, that's your job, bro.
Yeah. Well, it didn't end too well for him because, one can argue that he was also putting a move on, his own teammate. But I'm not, trying to portion blame on there because both drivers came together and it was highly unfortunate. And if you were to give a little bit more blame, it would probably be to Pierre.
But even in that situation, I don't understand, because if we're talking about how does Fernando finish in P3, right? How does Fernando finish in P3? And then, because the incident with Esteban and Pierre happened after Sainz punted Fernando, right?
Yeah.
Right. Let's be real. It did. So somehow Fernando still finishes in P3, even though he technically was in the back. And so did Pierre and Esteban get a DNF. So that to me is also unclear. Let's not forget that.
Yeah. Back in the day, what they did was they just took the results of the lap before. And then even if you're a DNF'd, the Alpines would have ended in that order.
Right.
Whatever the grid was. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give any blame in that one. It was really weird, but also it's really unfortunate because Gasly was having a hell of a race in P5.
Big race.
And Alpine was really showing some really good pace throughout the whole race there. And thank God that it was with Ocon and that Alpine is not going to, protest their own team because he could have gotten a race ban for that if the FIA had looked into it. He still has that Lubin over his head. So I'm just glad that, because it would have been a really bad one and he would have been found guilty, to be honest, because if the FIA just applies its, the way it looks at incidents. But he escaped at least.
Yeah. And interesting enough, this morning, motorsport.com posted on their Instagram, a 10 things we learned from Australia. And one of the things was that the FIA doesn't know how to handle end of race incidents. And it doesn't seem like they do. At least this era of stewards, whoever they may be, because they're switching race to race. I fucking hate to bring up this quote again, but where's the consistency? It's been kind of a perennial problem in Formula One, right? The interpretation of the rules. Sometimes you do feel like there's a bit of a bias. Even if there technically isn't one. For me to say that I think the penalty to Carlos Sainz, who drives for Ferrari, is harsh, that says a lot, I think. I don't usually say that. I mean, we're going to get into Ferrari because they had an abysmal weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what people would have said if this was, Lewis punching off Max, or, things would have been a little different. I think emotions kind of get, tangled up.
Hope had been. I wished I was like, come on, Lewis, get in there.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, after all this confusion, Max still took his 37th win, first win in Melbourne, 3 in a row to start the year, and it never looked really in danger, maybe in the very beginning when the Mercs had a really banging start. Yeah. But Max just he won, but it was a very sloppy win. He got off the line slowly. George took him really quickly, and then he left the door wide open for Lewis, who went in, who made a really good pass. And we got to say, they fought for the same piece of track, and they didn't end up losing a wing or making contact for once, because when these two get together, it's usually
game over.
Yeah, someone's going to the pits to change something usually, or they're both out. So he did have a little bit of that he pushed me off, but no, he didn't. First of all,
no, he had a big moment where he was like, he pushed me off. It's once again, and I will say this, I think Max showed that in some cases he can be very vulnerable, and when
he makes mistakes,
in head-to-head racing, sometimes I think we saw if other cars can challenge him. While obviously he's having a great year so far, I think we saw a more vulnerable Max this weekend. I mean, he made a mistake at the end of the race, like went off, and quite like had Lewis been any closer, that could have been his. I mean, we'll see about that because as we saw when Max overtook Lewis, the straight line pace that Red Bull has is just absurd. There was nothing Lewis could have done there. Like you're not, and I read a bunch of like comments online that Lewis didn't do enough to defend and all this. I'm like, there's nothing.
How do you defend against DRS?
Yeah, like not happening.
No, I mean, but you know what? For a few minutes though, it was entertaining. I'm sure you must have loved the start when Russell took off, and then that was a great pass by Lewis. Also, like props to him because I was not expecting Lewis to go wheel to wheel with Max there. And he did it, and we had a 1-2 for a while, and Russell looked like he was in a good position, like two cars against one. It would have been Lewis would have been sacrificed honestly on strategy, and before that first red flag, Russell pit early, and he got almost not a free pit stop, but a very quick pit stop, and he would have been there would have been a bit of a Merc sandwich with Max in the middle, and it would have been a bit more uncomfortable. And like as you said, any mistake that Max would have made there, Merc could have picked up the pieces, but unfortunately we saw that we had a red flag first of all, and then Russell kind of got fucked with that, and then his engine blew out. So we will never know what would have happened. But Merc showed some pace this weekend, and
they're qualifying. I mean, I think that was actually a better situation for them to be in rather than having getting pole would have been crazy. I don't think that was really in the cards, but like with them being 2-3 behind Max, I think that put them in a better position to ultimately, have Lewis finish on the podium. I mean, finish P2. That's a huge result for Merc.
And Lewis was pumped at the end of the race. Like I haven't seen him like that in a long time.
Well, I mean, I will say this race with all the, the craziness and chaos aside, like it was a fun race to watch. And, I think Merc has to be excited about that. But going back to Max, Red Bull still, like Christian Horner before the beginning of the race said that like Checo probably could get a P8 just because the track is, Australia is a bit different than what we've seen. And all the Max fanboys out there are probably like, well, Max would finish first. No, I'm sure they would. I'm sure there's a bunch of Max fanboys like, dude. And I told you about, I mentioned this week, like I saw these comments about something I posted on Reddit, and all these Max fanboys are like, oh, the Checo apologists, and just talking so much shit, and it's exhausting. I'm just tired of it. But anyway,
can you remind us what you posted though?
Yeah, I posted a meme from Saudi. It was Jos Verstappen or Max Verstappen finishes second biggest dickhead behind Dad Jos.
Yeah, so the whole point was showing Jos not like unhappy at the podium celebration. I mean, you did poke the Max fans a little bit there.
Whatever. Take a joke, you crybabies.
I loved it. I mean,
it's great. Anyway, no, I mean, like, point being, Checo salvaged. I think he did a great job coming from the back.
But I'll tell you what, I lost all hope of Checo competing with Max already. He just doesn't have it for me this year, and I hope I'm wrong. And we're going to a track that he does really well on, Baku, but he doesn't perform consistently enough in order to be up there with him. And do I think Max would have won from the pit lane? I don't know when, but he would have finished higher than Checo.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay. It's possible. 9
times out of 10, which, and I hate to say this because I love Checo and I really thought Checo could bring it to Max, but Max is just, he's on another level. And
I know, I hate to say it.
Yeah. even going off, on, makes a few mistakes, he still has such like there's such a cushion to Checo that he just has him. It's too easy. But
I mean, we'll see. I'm still a little hope for Checo, but
you got to have the hope because otherwise the season's over, right? We saw like 3 different tracks. Red Bull is just miles ahead of everyone, so we need Checo to make this interesting, keep it a little dramatic. And I was, the whole race, I was kind of hoping we'd see a bit of Lewis versus Fernando, like wheel to wheel, because it was shaping up. They stuck to each other the whole race, and there was leading up to the weekend, there was a bit of back and forth between these two, and I think Fernando was calling out Lewis because Lewis said, "I've never seen a car this fast," and then Fernando said, "Oh, I think he's getting old because he had the fastest car for 7 years, and it was a rocket ship on the straight." And then after qualifying, Lewis just said, like, I just hope it ends up like my first year when he passed Alonso on the outside, like without naming him. And then in the end, they were kind of both, very friendly, a lot of respect. Oh my God, you drove a great race. No, you drove a great race. And, but, I want to see the wheel to wheel because then, when these two go wheel to wheel, it's not as polite afterwards.
You know what? I think Fernando needs to be mindful of some of the things that he says. Like maybe I'm trying to protect Lewis here a little bit. I do love the jabbing. I do love the jabbing between them, but there was another comment where Fernando came on the radio, and I'm sure Lewis has heard this one, where he's like, he only knows how to race when he's out in front.
Oh yeah, spot 22.
In regards to Lewis, and I don't think there's love. I think there's respect between the two of them. I think you might have said this, but there's respect between the two of them, but they're willing to jab each other. Like they and it's almost, I think it's fun for them in some ways.
Yeah, they enjoy it for sure.
And I think Lewis knows at the end of the day that he's bested Fernando like over the course of both their careers.
That's clearly.
Well, let's think about it. Just if we're going to go back in time a little, 2007 McLaren.
Yeah, as a rookie.
And Fernando basically like got mad because he wasn't looked at as a number 1 anymore at McLaren, and there was a fight for it. And Lewis ended up going on to win his he left McLaren, Fernando did, and Lewis ends up going on to win his first driver's title. And meanwhile, Fernando's made some questionable career moves. This one might. No, I mean, just realistically, and maybe this one's the right one. I don't know. We'll see. But I do like the banter between them. I think what we're starting to see is more respect between the two. But they're not willing to take a shot every now and then.
Yeah. Did you hear Lewis during the race talking to Bono? He was like, "I am not losing out to him." when Alonso was getting close, he doesn't call him by his name or anything. It's him. So it was nice. I appreciate the amount of mutual respect, but also there is a bit of there's a lot of competition between them, and because they're similar generations, and if they start fighting for those P2s, P3s, and maybe one day, the day Max is out of the race and they're fighting for that win, that's going to be fun. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, for sure. And I think too, Merck has to be encouraged by this result. I think even if Georgia, I mean, they've got to look at what caused George's George's engine failure, but you'd have to be like to get, first of all, to start P2 and P3 and then have Lewis finish on the podium. I didn't expect this. I did not expect them to be anywhere near the podium. And it's not because of the DNFs, it's because they merited it. Like it was, they put in a great performance this weekend. And
let's see if it was track specific, because usually Mercedes does really well here, or is it, a trend? Is it something that Merck has figured out on setup? But, all the post-race interviews kind of pointed towards the fact that they know they've got updates coming, and that if they have these setup changes that are working, it can only get much better from there. So interesting to see what happens in the next few races with them. And honestly, I was really happy to see Aston Martin confirm on a third track they're there. It's no longer a fluke now. It's been 3 races, and P3 and P4, very strong results. They've already scored more points in the first 3 races than they scored the whole of 2022.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts. By 10 points, like not by little already.
I mean, they've got to be. I mean, Stroll finished behind Fernando too.
Exactly. There was an element of luck, but 3 in a row. It's also a trend, and it's also a trend for Ferrari now. 3 races in a row, and no podiums, nothing. Leclerc, who I love, who is the future champion. I don't recognize him this year because that was entirely driver mistake for me at turn 1, trying to go on the outside of both Aston Martins. I don't know what he was thinking. Following a bad qualifying, I don't recognize him nor the team this year.
You know what? I have a question for you. Do you think this? I mean, if we think about it, like, do we think this is because they've had so much internal turmoil as far as leadership goes? I almost feel bad for Fred Vasseur.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know. I think it's hard to judge the leadership after 3 races because I think he has done a few good things, but I do feel that internally there were some pro Binottos that are not playing ball, and that might be causing some shit in the back.
Wow. I mean, you think there are guys on the team that are actually deliberately not backing Vasseur and like putting out their best work? I mean, I don't know what best work means at Ferrari these days. But
I mean, I don't know. They're not sandbagging or anything.
No, but they're
But
being Italian, I will say about it. Maybe I don't know. Is that it?
Yeah, but exactly though. You're talking about being Italian communication. They're probably like holding back on communication and not rooting for him to succeed. And even if it's a little bit of passive aggressiveness here and there, it doesn't lead to anything good in the end, right? So I don't know. I'm baffled. I think I'm going through the grief stages. But it's a bit more accelerated this year. Like I could already tell the car is not the Red Bull beater. It's not bad because like on pace it was kind of there in the race, right? If they had started behind the Mercs, that would have been a really good battle. But it's not what we want. It's like we want a title, same as like Merc fans. Like they don't want to fight for 3 and 4, and it's not happening this year. But I'm not even sad. I'm just kind of I don't know. Right now I'm a little indifferent, and I'm hoping that the 4 weeks coming up, because I thought, oh my god, last year Charles did a Grand Slam in Melbourne, so it's gonna be great this year out at T1. Last year he retired from the lead in Baku, so I'm hoping maybe a little podium in Baku, and then let's build it back, race by race.
I can see there's like a video that's coming to mind of just like sad Charles and sad Carlos, and behind it is the song, like the acoustic version of Mad World playing. That song, like all around us are familiar faces. That one, worn out places. And it's like just a crescendo of them looking just absolutely fucking defeated, because this sucks, dude. If you're a Tifosi right now, man, I would be eating my tears in pasta.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much what they're doing at this point. And we'll be heading to Imola very soon as well. So, yeah, let's see. I mean, honestly, at this point, I'm just gonna wait and see. There's a lot of teams that are in this position, but Ferrari is particularly hurting, I think, this year. But yeah, Carlos could have got a podium this weekend. So I look at the positives wherever I can get them. But it's sad.
And that's the other thing that has to be discussed. Like Carlos had a good weekend. Carlos had a good. I mean, good. I mean, he had a better weekend, and the FIA, the stewards' decision aside, like he should really. I guess what I hope is he doesn't take. I would be more mad at the stewards and less mad at my performance, because that's really what it should be.
And I think that's what
not let him get too down.
Yeah, I think that's what they're highlighting too. Like they know where they stand, and was it unfair? Yeah, everyone's saying it, and let's just move on. I mean,
I'd be curious to see if that gets overturned. Honestly,
I don't know. Did they protest?
You'd have to think. I mean, Fred came out and was like, they should have met with Carlos before they gave the penalty. I would appeal it if I were Ferrari. Why not? You have nothing to lose.
Yeah, let's see. Literally. I mean, Haas went for it, right? So yeah. Well, I was also pretty happy for Hulk because he had a great performance this weekend. By the way, Hulk in qualifying 3-0 against K-Mag, which is phenomenal. Wow. And he's now ahead of him in the championship. He's also tied. He's tied with Charles Leclerc on points. I mean, they're at 6 points. And McLaren, double points for McLaren with P6 for Lando, I think, and P8 for Piastri.
I need to say something on this.
Yeah.
Actually, just going back to Hulk real quick. Did you see before I say the thing about McLaren, did you see what happened at the end of the race with him?
Yeah, he broke down on the last lap.
His car broke down, and apparently he had some electrical issue, and he had to do he had to exit the car. It's called an ERS exit. I don't know.
Yeah, without touching the car.
Touching the car, you basically jump off. So if there is some sort of electrical failure, you're not getting electrocuted by being grounded. But
yeah, because there's a lot of current going through those cars. Yeah.
Yeah. He had that was like his race engineer was like, stop the car now. Like they didn't tell him until after the line, and then after the line they're like, absolutely not. Get out of the car right now. But yeah, McLaren, man. Here's my take on McLaren. McLaren would not have finished in the points this weekend had it not been for all the DNFs.
Fair.
That honest. No, I mean that's Piastri definitely would not have. Maybe Lando at like P9 or P10, maybe.
Yeah, he would have picked up a point or two, I think.
Sure. Do you have to be encouraged if you're McLaren? Yeah, I guess, because you picked up points, but we spoke last week about who needs a biggest result, or who needs a result this weekend. And I think we both agreed it was McLaren. Yeah. I'd say they got the result, but I wouldn't say it was on merit.
No, but you'll take it, right?
If you're the team, you'll take it. But as the observer, I'd be like, if there hadn't been as much chaos in that race, I have a feeling that they both would have finished out of the points.
Yeah, and I think history will remember it as Piastri scored points at his home race, his first point. So for the whole romantic side of it, we'll take it for F1. Guan Yu Zhou picked up some points as well, and so did Yuki finally, who didn't finish P11 thanks to Carlos Sainz's penalty, because he had finished 11 for the last 3 races, I think, in a row. Which, if he finished 11th again, would have set a record for finishing at the same position that's not P1 the most amount of times. Anyway, a record that he wanted to avoid, that he did. And Yuki had a great restart. I don't know if you saw that, because he passed about 3 cars before the whole incident. Yuki's good at starts, so we got to give him a shout out. And Logan Sargent, bit of a mistake there, but he wasn't the only one to make mistakes this weekend, so we'll give him that. But let's look at our stand championship to wrap up here. Once again,
what up?
Yeah, once again, it's you're on a streak there, Knowles. You got points for pole and P1, so that's a 20-point weekend for you. I only got points for Max, so you extend your lead. And your lead is now double digits, 44 to 34. Well done.
Yeah, I got 10-point lead there.
It's a good cushion going into this break that we have. Which, by the way, we have this 4-week break because the Chinese Grand Prix is canceled, and that's why there's such a long break between 2 Grand Prix. That's not the summer break.
I don't really understand this. I mean, I would be interested to have someone in Formula One explain to. I mean, it's got to be scheduling or something, but a 4-week gap this early in the season seems a little much.
I'll tell you who's going to love that is all the teams that need to get in that wind tunnel, aka Merck. McLaren's coming out with apparently a B spec or a huge update in Baku. So yeah, we have a few weeks to look into, all this, all the teams that need to get their shit together, basically.
Ferrari's going to have 4 weeks of just sad introspection.
I hope not, man. I hope they're back in that wind tunnel.
Nah, they're not. They're just going to be in the wind tunnel. Like the whole team just goes in there as torture. They're just getting blown out in there.
Just Fred Vasseur in the wind tunnel, wind in his
sad Fred
in the little hair that he has left.
Oh God. He just puts everybody in there as punishment. He's like, I want you to know how it feels. I want you to know how the car feels.
Yeah. Oh man. So we have a few weeks off. We'll get into this because there's a lot of things to talk about. I think we need to talk about McLaren. We need to talk about Merck because do they need to bring a new car? Do they need to just develop this one? A lot of things to talk about. Is Red Bull going to start feeling the heat of their penalty? Maybe not in Baku, but in the next few races, hopefully. One can hope.
We'll see. I don't know, man. There's a lot to ponder in these 4 weeks. A lot to ponder.
And we'll be there. So make sure to follow us at the Grandstand F1 on all the social media platforms. And yeah, if you're listening to our podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever the fuck you listen to it, leave us a review because that helps us out.
Yep. 5 stars, baby.
That's right. Well, on that...
What? Nice pause there.
Yeah, no, I was thinking of something witty to say and it just didn't come. So hopefully you'll be more creative with your 5-star reviews. We'll take a 4-star review as well, I guess, after that one.
No.
But from us at the Grandstand, we'll see you on the next one.